The rain felt like needles, or maybe that was just the weight of 1,000 staring eyes. Alara's knees hit the mud of the ceremonial clearing. Cold water seeped through her thin linen pants. She didn't feel it. She only
Easy
felt
now,
the
boy.
scorching
I've got
brand
you.
of their collective
Shh,
gaze.
rest. We'll get through
The
this.
entire Silver Hollow pack stood witness under a weeping gray sky. Their expressions ranged from pity to contempt. Some wouldn't even look at her. At the front, elevated on the stone dais, stood her family, Alpha Arcturus, her father. His face carved from granite disappointment etched in every line. Luna Selene, her mother. Tears shimmering in her eyes, but she would not let them fall. Not for this, not for her. And Kalen, her brother. 23 years old, golden heir to the packed jaw tight with what might have been shame, or just irritation at the delay. Arcturus's voice rolled over the assembly. It carried the weight of his rank, amplified by generations of authority. Once that voice had been her comfort, her safety. Now it flayed her alive. Alara of the Silver Hollow. The ritual words turned to ice in the air. You have reached your 20th year. The moon has risen over you 13 times since your first shift, and yet no secondary gender has manifested. A low murmur rippled through the crowd. Alara kept her eyes on the mud, on a single blade of grass bent under the weight of a raindrop. Focus on that. Don't cry. Don't you dare cry in front of them. No Alpha's strength, Arcturus continued. No Beta's balance. No Omega's grace. The pack spirit is silent for you. The words landed like blows. The law of our ancestors is clear. A wolf without a designation is a ghost within the pack. A limb that cannot feel the pack bond is a limb that must be released. Released. Such a gentle word for exile, for being cut off from the only home, the only heartbeat she had ever known. Therefore, Arcturus paused. The silence stretched, cruel and absolute. You are henceforth named Hollow Omega. You carry the burden of absence. You may dwell within our territorial bounds, but you are outside the pack bond. You will not join in hunts, in councils, in ceremonies. Your voice holds no weight. The declaration hung in the air like a death sentence. You are a shadow. This is the will of the pack and the moon. It happened all at once. The formal rejection slammed into Alara, not physical but psychic, a silent wave of severance that made her gasp. One moment there was the low hum of the pack link in the back of her mind, that constant, comforting sense of presence, of belonging. Like distant music she'd never had to think about, just knew was there. The next moment, silence. Not the silence of a quiet room, the silence of a void, of something vital ripped away, leaving a wound that wouldn't stop screaming. It was the loneliest sound in the world, the absence of a sound that had been her birthright. Alara swayed, her vision blurred. She locked her knees, refusing to fall, but the world tilted sideways. She was untethered, adrift, a satellite cut loose from orbit, spinning into the dark. Let the ceremony conclude, Kalen's voice. Brisk, efficient, he was already moving on. The pack began to disperse. Their whispers rose like a tide no longer checked by decorum. Always was a weak thing, a flaw in the Alpha's line. What use is a wolf that cannot connect? Alara forced herself to stand. Her legs trembled, but she would not crawl away. She lifted her head, met her mother's eyes for one fleeting second. The sorrow there was deep, oceanic, but anchored by duty. Selene gave the slightest shake of her head, a warning, do not make a scene. Then she turned, followed Arcturus and Kalen into the great lodge, away from the cold, away from the rain, away from her daughter. The clearing emptied. Alara stood alone in the mud, the rain washing away everything but the terrible howling emptiness where her pack had been. Hollow Omega. The title was a mockery. Omegas were rare, cherished, the emotional heart of a pack blessed with powerful soothing bonds. She was the opposite, a null point, a stain of emptiness where a gift should have been. The walk to the cottage was a blur of gray, green, and cold. Her belongings, a meager sack of clothes, and a few personal items, had already been moved to the outskirts. The Hollow's Cottage, they called it, a dilapidated hut near the forbidden western ridge where the forest grew dense and the silence pressed in like a living thing. It was a place for broken things. The cottage was as grim as promised, mossy stone walls, a sagging roof that looked one strong wind from collapse, a single room smelling of damp earth and neglect. Alara dropped her sack inside the door. She couldn't breathe in there. The silence of the broken bond was a pressure in her skull, a weight on her chest. She needed to move, to run, to outrun the screaming void inside her. She ran into the woods. Not as a wolf, her shift was clumsy, powerless, a reminder of everything she lacked, but on two human legs stumbling over roots, letting the brambles tear at her clothes. The rain mingled with the hot, silent tears finally streaming down her face. She ran until her lungs burned and the light began to fade. She didn't care where she was going. She just needed the void to stop screaming. That's when she heard it, a sound that cut through the dripping forest silence and the howling emptiness inside her. It wasn't a growl, it was a rumble, deep and resonant, vibrating up from the earth itself, a sound of pure, untamed fury and agony. Alara froze. Her breath came in ragged plumes in the chilly air. She knew where she was. The foot of the western ridge, and she knew what lay in the caverns above. Skull, the giant wolf, a creature of legend older than the packs themselves, a force of nature given fur and fang. For generations, alphas had tried to bind him, to prove their worth by riding the beast into battle. For generations, they had failed. The mightiest of their kind had been thrown, mauled, or simply ignored by the colossal creature. He was a living trial, a monument to failure, kept on the sacred grounds as a challenge that taunted every alpha born. The rumble came again, followed by a sharp, pained whine that belied the beast's size. It was a sound that spoke of suffering so deep it transcended species. Alara's feet moved before her mind caught up. She began to climb. The path was treacherous, slick with wet stone, but something pulled her forward. Not Pac-Bon that was gone. This was different, a compulsion she didn't understand, a resonance in the void that made it ache less, made it hum instead of scream. She scrambled up, drawn by that terrible, lonely sound. The ledge opened into a vast, shadowy cavern, and there he was. Skull. Massive didn't begin to cover it. He was the size of a small cottage, his fur a tumultuous mix of storm cloud gray and charcoal black. His eyes, chips of molten gold, were dim now, clouded with pain. He lay on his side, great ribcage heaving, and Alara saw why. A huge, jagged shard of dark metal, like a corrupted thorn, was embedded deep in his shoulder. The flesh around it was swollen, pulsing with a sickly violet light. This was no natural injury. This reeked of dark magic, of poison. Skull's massive head lifted. A warning growl erupted from his throat, shaking pebbles from the cavern ceiling. It was a sound meant to send her fleeing in terror. Alara didn't flee. The void where her pack bond had been echoed his isolated fury. His pain mirrored the raw, gaping wound in her own spirit. They were both alone, both rejected, both in agony. She took a step forward. "It's all right." Her voice trembled, not with the fear she should have felt, but with a strange, aching empathy. "I'm not going to hurt you." The giant wolf stared. His golden eyes narrowed. He snorted a dismissive huff of air. She was nothing. A scentless, powerless human girl. Alara took another step, then another, her hands open at her sides. "I can see it's hurting you. That thorn doesn't belong there." She was within reach now. One swipe of his paw could end her. His gaze tracked her, intelligent, wary. Alara sank to her knees in the damp earth of the cavern floor. Not in submission, but to make herself smaller, less threatening. "May I?" She breathed the question, her hand hovering in the air, pointing toward the shard. Skull watched her for a long, endless moment. The forest held its breath. Then, with a sigh that seemed to come from the very roots of the mountain, the great wolf laid his head back down on the stone, closed his eyes. It wasn't permission, it was exhaustion. Surrender to his fate. But Alara chose to take it as a chance. Gently, so gently, she placed her hands on his fur near the wound. It was coarse and warm, thrumming with a latent power that made her fingertips tingle. The vile energy from the shard bit at her skin. A cold burn, she ignored it. Focused on the heat of his body, the rhythm of his labored breath. "This will hurt." Her voice was barely a thread of sound. She wrapped her hands around the base of the dark shard. The moment she touched it, a jolt of blinding, icy pain shot up her arms, like plunging her hands into a frozen lake laced with broken glass. It wasn't just cold, it was absence. A negation of warmth, of life, of everything good. Alara cried out, but she didn't let go. She pulled. Skull roared. The sound was earth-shattering, a blast of pure torment that echoed through the ridge, shaking the stone beneath her knees. He jerked and Alara was thrown back, the corrupted thorn clutched in her hands. It dripped with both his blood and that strange pulsing violet light. She scrambled away as Skull lurched to his feet. He towered over her, his lips pulled back from teeth longer than her hand. Alara crouched, holding the poisonous shard away from her body, waiting for the killing blow. She had dared to touch him, to cause him more pain. This was how she would die. But the blow didn't come. Skull stood panting, staring down at her. The furious glare in his eyes, it was changing. The sickly violet light was receding from the wound. Clean crimson blood flowed instead. The tension bled from his massive frame. He took a deep, shuddering breath. His first clean breath in who knew how long. He lowered his head, brought his enormous muzzle close to Alara's face. She could feel his hot breath on her skin, smell the wild electric scent of him, ozone and stone and living storm. She closed her eyes. A warm, rough sensation brushed across her cheek. He was nuzzling her, carefully, with a gentleness unimaginable for such a beast. Alara's eyes flew open. The molten gold of his gaze was clear now, fixed on her with an unnerving, profound intensity. He looked from her face to the dark shard she still clutched, then back to her face. In that look, she saw not a monster, but a creature of immense and lonely power. And in that moment, the howling void inside her didn't fill, but it echoed with a new foreign sound. Not the pack bond, something else, something wilder, older. A low, resonant thrum, like feeling the deep note of a bell through stone. It was the echo of Skull's presence, a warmth against the cold emptiness. He nudged her shoulder with his nose, a clear push. Then he turned and paced back into the depths of his cavern, casting one last inscrutable glance her way before disappearing into the shadows. Alara sat there in the gathering dark, the rain-cooled air sharp in her lungs, the poisonous thorn cold in her hand, the mark of her rejection still fresh on her skin. But as she looked toward the dark cavern where the impossible wolf had vanished, a single defiant thought ignited in the silence. They called her a ghost, a stain. But a ghost couldn't touch a legend, and a stain couldn't pull a thorn from the heart of a storm. Alara stumbled back to the cottage in a daze, the dark shard wrapped in a strip torn from her tunic. Her hands still tingled, a strange cold fire lingering where she'd gripped the corrupted metal. The void where her pack bond had been was still there, a silent aching hollow in her mind. But now there was a whisper in that void, not a sound, a sensation. A low resonant thrum, like feeling the deep note of a bell through stone. It was the echo of Skull's presence, a warmth against the cold emptiness, a mountain on the horizon, a storm sleeping in the hills. And somehow she knew it was aware of her, a tiny flickering light at the edge of its vast perception. The cottage was dark and colder than the forest. Alara lit the single guttering oil lamp with trembling fingers. In its weak light, she unwrapped the shard. It was about the length of her forearm, jagged and wicked. Its surface seemed to drink the lamplight rather than reflect it. That sickly violet glow had faded to a dull, intermittent pulse, like a dying ember. But the malevolence it radiated was palpable. This was no natural object. It was a weapon, deliberately forged, deliberately aimed. Who would do this? Who could do this to a creature like Skull? The questions swirled, frightening in their implications. This was beyond pack rivalries. This smelled of the old, forbidden magics, the kind spoken of in warnings by elder wolves. A soft knock at the door nearly made Alara jump out of her skin. She hastily covered the shard, shoving it under the thin pallet that served as a bed. "Who is it?" Her voice came out rough, scratchy. "It's me, Liska." A wave of fragile relief washed over her. Liska was a beta, a weaver's daughter, not a close friend. Alara had none of those. But one of the few who had never openly mocked her weakness. She'd sometimes shared her lunch when Alara trained alone. Alara opened the door. Liska stood there, a hood pulled over her auburn hair, a basket in her hands. Her kind oval face was pinched with worry. She slipped in quickly, closing the door behind her. "Lara." She breathed the name, her eyes scanning Alara's torn, muddy clothes, the scratches on her arms. "By the moon, are you all right?" I heard a terrible roar from the western ridge. The whole pack felt a tremor of fear through the bond. Some of the hunters thought it was an earthquake. She paused, her gaze searching. "You were up there, weren't you?" The concern in her voice was a balm and a torment. Liska could still feel the pack bond. She belonged. Alara was a ghost to it now. "I went for a walk. The woods are the only place left for me." The half-truth was bitter on her tongue, her voice low, guarded. Liska's expression softened with pity. Alara stiffened. Pity was a cage with velvet bars. "I brought you some things." Liska set the basket on the rickety table. Bread, cheese, a wedge of dried meat, a few apples, and a thick woolen blanket. "It gets cold out here." "Thank you." Genuine gratitude warred with shame. She was now an object of charity. Liska hesitated, twisted her fingers. "Alara, there's something you need to know." Kalen the Alpha Heir. He's announced a trial. Ice water trickled down Alara's spine. A trial? What do you mean, for Skull? Tomorrow. He says the pack needs a symbol of strength now more than ever, that his father's reign has been too cautious. He believes it's his destiny to succeed where all others have failed. To ride the giant wolf and prove the Silver Hollow's might for the next generation. Liska's words tumbled out, laced with nervous energy. The whole pack is buzzing with it. He's been training relentlessly. A cold, hard knot formed in Alara's stomach. Kalen, with his unwavering confidence and alpha strength, approaching Skull. The image of her brother, proud, powerful, but utterly unaware of the poison of the pain of the creature's profound intelligence, filled her with a dread that was entirely new. It wasn't just fear for him, it was fear of him, of what he might provoke. He can't. The words slipped out, more to herself than to Liska. Liska misread her terror. He's the strongest of his generation, Alara. Maybe he can. She reached out, touching Alara's arm. The pack bond allowed her to offer a tiny pulse of comfort. Alara felt nothing but the pressure of her fingers. Liska flinched, remembering the isolation. I'm sorry, I should go. They'll notice I'm missing. She left as quietly as she'd come, leaving the food, the blanket, and a world of trouble behind. Alara couldn't eat. She sat on the floor, her back against the cold stone wall, listening to the whisper in her void, the thrumming mountain-like presence. He doesn't know, she thought, pouring her anxiety toward that presence. He'll see you as a beast, a challenge he won't understand. There was no response, just the steady, resonant thrum, but the quality of it shifted, minutely, a slight edge, like distant thunder on a clear day. A note of anticipation, or warning. Morning came too soon. Alara awoke before dawn, her heart already racing. The whisper in her void was no longer a thrum. It was a low, steady growl, vibrating in the very marrow of her bones. Skull was not sleeping. He was waiting. Alara couldn't stay in the cottage. A compulsion fiercer than any she'd ever known pulled her toward the ridge. She had to be there. She had to see. She took a hidden game trail up the ridge, one that emerged onto a high, secluded outcrop shrouded in gorse and hawthorn. It gave her a clear, if distant, view of the cavern entrance and the broad, rocky platform before it. Below, in the clearing at the ridge's base, the entire Silver Hollow pack had gathered. Colors, banners, expectant faces turned upward. Her father and mother sat on a raised dais, regal and impassive. Kalen stood before them, clad not in finery but in practical reinforced leathers. He looked every inch the heroic alpha to be. The ceremony began with horns and chanting. Alara couldn't hear the words, but she knew the rituals, the calling of ancestral strength, the proclamation of intent. Kalen raised his arms, his voice strong and clear, carrying up the mountainside. He then turned and began the climb. Not the treacherous path Alara had taken, but the formal, time-worn stairs cut into the stone. Alara's breath caught in her throat. The growl in her mind deepened. She could feel a pressure building in the air, a static charge before a lightning strike. Kalen reached the platform. He stood tall, his aura of alpha command radiating outward, a force meant to dominate, to compel. Alara could feel its echo, a blunt, demanding pressure even from her hiding spot. Skull! Kalen's shout rang with authority. Ancient One, Beast of the Mountain! I am Kalen, son of Arcturus, Alpha Heir of the Silver Hollow. I come to claim the pact forgotten. I come to ride you into legend. Silence. Then from the deep black of the cavern, 2 points of molten gold ignited. They emerged, followed by the colossal stormhead, the powerful shoulders. Skull stepped out into the gray morning light, dwarfing Kalen. The pack below gasped as one, a sound of awe and terror. Kalen, to his credit, did not falter. He took a step forward, his will pressing against the creature. Kneel, he commanded, the alpha power saturating the word. Skull's lips pulled back. The growl that emerged wasn't just in Alara's mind now. It was a physical wave of sound that shook dust from the rocks. It was a refusal that shook the very foundations of Kalen's certainty. Kalen's face hardened. He tried again, his power flaring brighter. I am your destined rider, kneel. Skull took a step forward, then another. He didn't kneel. He stalked toward Kalen, his head low, his gaze locked on the young alpha. It wasn't submission, it was assessment, and Kalen was being found wanting. Panic flickered in Kalen's eyes, quickly masked by fury. This was not going as the story said. The beast was not ignoring him, nor was it attacking in mindless rage. It was judging him and finding him lacking. You will obey, Kalen roared, and in a flash of light and coalescing power he shifted. Where a man had stood was now a magnificent silver-furred wolf, large and powerful muscles coiled. He bared his teeth, a challenge in every line of his body. A mistake. A terrible, prideful mistake. Skull's response was instantaneous. A roar. Not of pain as Alara had heard before, but of pure, unadulterated wrath. It was the sound of a mountain deciding to move. He didn't pounce. He simply charged. A tidal wave of fur and fury. Kalen, for all his strength, was a leaf in a hurricane. He was batted aside with a swipe of a paw that looked almost casual. He yelped, tumbling across the stone, scrambling to find purchase. He tried to rally, to dart in for an attack. But Skull was a force of nature. Another blow sent Kalen crashing into the rock face with a sickening thud. He shifted back to human form. Bruised, bleeding from a gash on his forehead, his clothes torn, his pride in tatters. The pack below was dead silent, horror-struck. Skull loomed over Kalen's prone form, his muzzle dipping down. Kalen froze, staring death in its golden eyes. And in that moment, the whisper in Alara's void became a scream. Not of anger, but of a desperate, protective urge that blazed through her hotter than any pack bond. She didn't think. She acted. She broke from her hiding spot, scrambling down the rough slope toward the platform, stones skittering under her feet. No! The cry was ripped from her throat, raw and primal. Every eye, the packs below Kalen's on the ground and the giant molten gold ones above snapped to her. The stained Omega, the ghost, charging onto the sacred trial ground. Skull, stop! Alara shouted, throwing herself between the giant wolf and her brother. Her arms spread wide. She faced the creature, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Please don't. The world held its breath. Skull's gaze shifted from Kalen to her. The wrath in his eyes, it didn't vanish. But it banked, tempered by something akin to curiosity. He sniffed the air, his massive head tilting. Alara slowly lowered her arms, her entire body trembling. She took a step toward him, her voice dropping to a murmur meant only for him. He didn't know. He doesn't understand. Like I didn't understand, until I saw the thorn. She heard Kalen stir behind her, a groan of pain and shock. Alara, what do you get away from it? She ignored him, kept her eyes on Skull. The giant wolf stared at her for a long, endless moment. Then he snorted, a hot breath that stirred her hair. He took one last look at the cowed alpha, a look of profound disdain, then turned. With a final earth-shaking rumble that was pure dismissal, he paced back into the darkness of his cavern, leaving Alara standing alone on the platform, shielding the air of the silver hollow pack. The silence from below was shattered by a rising wave of stunned murmurs. Alara turned slowly to face her brother. His expression was a maelstrom of pain, humiliation, and a dawning terrible realization. He wasn't looking at the beast. He was looking at her, at the sister without a scent, without a bond, who had just commanded the unconquerable. And in his eyes, she didn't see gratitude. She saw the first cold spark of fear. The descent from the ridge was silent. Agonizing, Kalen refused Alara's help. Limping on his own, his face a rigid mask of stoic pain. Two senior betas rushed up the formal stairs to assist him, shooting Alara looks of utter bewilderment. She followed behind, a ghost once more, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes like physical blows. The pack parted before them, a sea of whispers. She stood before Skull. The beast listened to her. The hollow Omega commanded the giant. Commanded, that was the word they used. It wasn't true. Alara had begged, had pleaded from a place of shared understanding. But to them, it looked like dominion. And in a world built on dominance, that was the only lens they had. They were led not to the healing halls, but directly to the Alpha's lodge. Arcturus' summons was a given. The great hall was empty of all but family and the highest-ranking elders. The air was thick with tension and the scent of Kalen's blood. Alpha Arcturus sat on his carved throne. Luna Salim beside him, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Kalen was eased into a chair, a healer already hovering, tending to the gash on his brow and his likely cracked ribs. Alara stood in the center of the room, exposed, still in her dirty, torn clothes from her scramble down the ridge. Explain. Her father's voice was a low, dangerous rumble, all paternal pretense stripped away. Kalen spoke first, his voice tight with pain and fury. The beast was enraged, unpredictable. It rejected the challenge. It attacked with malice. He shot a glance at Alara, his eyes hard. Then she intervened, shouted at it, threw herself in the way. I don't know what trick she used, but it turned and left. All eyes turned to Alara. The Elder Council, stern-faced men and women who had voted for her, staining, watched with icy scrutiny. Alara, Celine's voice was strained. What possessed you? You could have been killed. Alara took a shallow breath. Her voice felt small in the vast hall. I wasn't possessed. I couldn't watch him die. You interfered in a sacred alpha trial. Elder Valdric, a wolf with a face like weathered granite, his tone brooking no argument. An unpardonable transgression. The Hollow has no place on sacred ground, let alone to disrupt pack destiny. Her actions saved your heir's life. Celine countered, a flicker of her steel showing. Did they? Arcturus's gaze was fixed on Alara, probing, analytical. Or did they undermine it? Kalen's trial was one of dominance. Either he would dominate the beast or be dominated by it. That is the way. To be spared by a Hollow, no less. He let the sentence hang, its implication more damaging than any physical wound. Kalen flinched, the shame burning brighter than his injuries. How did you know the beast would not kill you? Another Elder Nara asked, her sharp eyes missing nothing. This was the precipice. Alara could lie, could say she was mad with grief, that she acted without thought. But the memory of the dark shard under her palate pressed on her, of Skull's intelligent, pained eyes. They saw a monster. She had seen a wounded sovereign. I've been to the ridge before, she admitted, her voice gaining a sliver of strength. After the staining, I heard it him in pain. I found Skull wounded. There was a piece of dark metal, like a poisoned thorn, lodged in his shoulder. I removed it. A stunned silence blanketed the hall. You touched the sacred beast. Valdric breathed. You removed a weapon from its flesh. Arcturus leaned forward, his alpha aura pressing down on her, demanding truth. Describe this thorn. Alara did, the jagged metal, the unnatural violet light, the cold malevolence. As she spoke, the elders exchanged grim looks. Arcturus's face grew darker. Dark iron, he finally said, the words falling like a tombstone. Forged in the old blighted forges, used by sorcerers and betrayers. It hasn't been seen in these lands for a century. His eyes narrowed at her. And you simply pulled it out without consequence. My hands still feel cold, but he was in agony. It was poisoning him. I couldn't leave it. Celine asked slowly, and after you removed this dark iron shard, what happened? Alara met her gaze. He let me go. He nudged me, as if in thanks. Impossible. Kalen spat, wincing as the healer tightened a bandage. The beast knows only rage. It doesn't reason. It doesn't feel gratitude. Then how do you explain its retreat today, Alpha Heir? Elder Nara asked, not unkindly but with pointed logic. If it knows only rage, why did it not slaughter the Hollow who stood before it? Why did it obey her command to desist? It wasn't obedience, Alara screamed internally, but she held her tongue. This changes things, Arcturus murmured, more to himself than to the room. He stood, pacing before his throne, a weapon of dark magic, used against a creature of primal power, on our very borders, an attack we did not detect. He stopped, his gaze landing on Alara again. But now it was the gaze of a strategist, not a disappointed father. And you, a null, a void in the pack bond. Yet you can approach Cyanus Skull, you can touch him. He tolerates your presence, perhaps even acknowledges it. The way he said it made her skin crawl. She was no longer just a stain. She was a curiosity, a potential tool. What are you suggesting, Arcturus? Celine asked, her voice tight. I am suggesting that the moon's rejection may have other purposes. A wolf the pack bond cannot touch. A creature of ancient magic does not perceive as a threat, or perhaps perceives as something else entirely. You cannot be thinking of using her? Horror threaded Celine's voice. The safety of the pack is paramount, Valdric stated. If the Hollow has a unique rapport with the beast, it must be explored. This dark iron is a declaration of hidden enemy. Skull is a power on our land. We must understand this connection. Alara felt the walls of a new, more gilded cage closing in around her, from rejected outcast to peculiar asset in the blink of an eye. No, Kalen said, pushing himself up in his chair, his face pale but determined. It is my burden, my failure. I will recover. I will train harder. I will face Skull again and fulfill my destiny. He couldn't even look at her. Your bravery is noted, my son, Arcturus said, but his tone was final. But destiny has presented a different path today, one we cannot ignore. He addressed Alara directly. She stiffened. Alara, You will return to the ridge. You will attempt to commune with Skull further. You will learn what you can about this attack, about his nature. You will be our eyes and ears where no other wolf can go. It was an order. From the Alpha, to her, the bondless ghost. The irony was a bitter pill. Father, you can't be serious, Kaelin protested. I am utterly serious. Arcturus's voice brooking no argument. Elara, you remain Hollow Omega. The edict stands. But you now have a duty to the pack that transcends that status. You will report to me and to the Elder Council directly. Do you understand? She understood. She was being sent back into the lion's den, not as a healer, but as a spy. The fragile thread of understanding she had with Skull was about to be tested, maybe corrupted, by the demands of the pack that had cast her out. She looked at her brother's furious, humiliated face, at her mother's worried eyes, at her father's calculating expression. The whisper in her void pulsed, a steady anchoring rhythm against the storm of their politics. She had no choice. But perhaps for the first time she had a purpose that wasn't about shame. I understand. Her voice quiet but clear in the silent hall. Good. Begin at dawn. Arcturus dismissed her with a wave. Elara turned and walked out of the lodge, leaving the warmth, the tension, and the weight of their expectations behind. The cool evening air was a relief. She looked up toward the western ridge, now shrouded in twilight. The whisper in her void was a low questioning hum. I'm sorry, she thought toward the mountain. Toward the storm wolf. They don't see you. They only see what you can do for them. And now they're using me to see it too. The hum deepened. Not in anger, but in what felt like a weary acknowledgement. He knew. Of course he knew. He had lived through centuries of such schemes. As Elara walked back to her isolated cottage, a new resolve hardened within her. She would do as the Alpha commanded. She would go to Skull, but she would not be their spy. She would be a translator, a bridge. And maybe, just maybe, she could protect the ancient lonely creature from the pack that wanted to own him, and protect the pack from the wrath of the sovereign they'd foolishly provoked. The game had changed. The stakes were higher than her loneliness. And she, the wolf with no bond, was now the most important piece on the board, whether she wanted to be or not. Dawn came cold and sharp. Elara dressed in the sturdiest clothes she had, leather pants, a thick tunic. Liska's woolen blanket fastened around her shoulders like a cloak. She packed a small satchel, water, a little of the food Liska had brought, and the dark iron shard, now wrapped in layers of cloth and tucked into an inner pocket. Its presence was a constant icy whisper against her side, a reminder of hidden danger. Her journey to the ridge felt different today. Not a flight into the woods to escape pain, but a deliberate pilgrimage, laden with dual purpose. The pack's eyes felt on her as she passed the outermost sentry posts. Whispers followed like shadows. There goes the Beast Whisperer, the Alpha's new pet project. The titles were no kinder than hollow. She took her hidden path, her senses heightened. The forest seemed more alive today. She noticed the specific scent of damp pine bark, the intricate pattern of spiderwebs beaded with dew, the distant rhythmic knocking of a woodpecker. It was as if removing the packbond's constant low-level noise had turned up the volume on everything else. Or perhaps it was the echo of Skull's presence in her mind, tuning her to a wilder frequency. She reached the platform. Standing before the cavern entrance was like standing at the edge of the world. The darkness within was absolute, but the thrum was a warm, living pulse, pulling her forward. Skull, she called, her voice echoing softly. It's Elara. I've returned. Silence. Then the soft scrape of a colossal claw on stone. Two golden eyes ignited from the deep black. Moving toward her, he emerged into the light, his storm gray fur seeming to shift and move like living cloud. He stopped a few paces away, towering over her, his head lowered to her level. His intelligent gaze swept over her, pausing at the satchel at her side. He sniffed the air, and a low questioning rumble vibrated in his chest. He was smelling the dark iron. I brought it. My Alpha, my father, he commanded me to come, to learn from you, to ask about this. She patted the satchel. They're afraid. They call it dark iron. They say it's a weapon of enemies. Skull huffed, a sound of profound disdain. He turned his head, looking back into his cavern, then back at her. He took a step backward, into the shadows, then paused, looking over his shoulder at her, an invitation. Elara's heart leapt into her throat. No one in all the legends had ever been invited into Skull's den. It was the ultimate forbidden space. To enter was either supreme trust or a terrible trap. The thrum in her mind was calm, expectant. She chose to trust it. She followed him into the darkness. The cavern wasn't a crude hole. It was a vast cathedral-like space. The ceiling lost in shadow, light filtered in from high, narrow fissures, painting shafts of gold on the stone floor. And the floor, it took her breath away. It was covered in a thick, soft layer of moss, lichen, and delicate bioluminescent fungi that glowed with a soft blue-green light, like a carpet of fallen stars. The air was cool, clean, and smelled of stone ozone and living earth. This was no monster's lair. It was a sanctuary. Skull paced to the center of the cavern and laid down on the starry moss, curling his massive body with a sigh. He watched her, waiting. Alara slowly walked further in, her awe palpable. "It's beautiful," she whispered, and the cavern seemed to swallow the sound, making it sacred. She sat down, not too close, folding her legs beneath her. She carefully unwrapped the dark iron shard, laying the cloth on the moss between them. The shard pulsed dully, an ugly blot against the natural beauty. Skull's gaze fixed on it, and a growl soft but full of old anger trickled from his throat. "Who did this to you?" Alara asked softly. He didn't speak. Could he speak? But an image sharp and sudden flashed into her mind, not through words, but through the connection they shared, the whisper in the void. She saw figures, hooded and shadowy, moving with unnatural silence through a moonless night. On the far side of the ridge, she felt a sharp burning pain in her shoulder. His shoulder, the memory of the ambush, the surprise, the venomous cold of the metal piercing his flesh. The figures had fled immediately after, not staying to see if he fell. Cowards. Assassins. The image faded, leaving Alara trembling. It was one thing to hear a story. It was another to feel the memory of betrayal in your own bones. They didn't want to fight you. They just wanted to poison you, to weaken you. Why more? Another ripple through the connection, this time a cascade of sensations, the weight of territory, the flow of ley lines beneath the earth, a sense of ancient guardianship. Skull was not just a beast on this land. He was part of it, a keystone. His health, his presence was tied to the health of the territory itself. Poison him and you poison the land. Weaken him and you weaken the natural barriers that protected this stretch of wilderness, including the Silver Hollow lands. A cold realization dawned. This wasn't just an attack on a legend. It was the first move in a war. The hidden enemy wanted the ridge, and they needed the Guardian gone to take it. The pack needs to know this. They think it's just a challenge, a symbol. They don't understand you're a Guardian. Skull's mental rumble held a note of deep skepticism. He showed her another flash. Arcturus's calculating eyes, Kalen's arrogant challenge, the generations of alphas seeing him as a trophy to be mounted. He didn't trust them. And why should he? I know. They don't see, but I am here. I see. Alara met his golden eyes. Let me be the bridge. Let me show them. Not for their glory, for the safety of this place, for your home. He studied her for a long time. Then he did something astonishing. He lowered his great head until his muzzle rested on the moss, right beside the dark iron shard. He closed his eyes, and he began to hum. Not a growl, a deep, resonant, melodic vibration that rose from his chest and filled the cavern. The stars beneath him brightened in response. The very air shimmered. And then images clearer than before began to flow into her. Not of pain or threat, but of knowledge, of the language of the land. She saw how the roots of the trees spoke to the stones, how the rivers carried memories to the sea. She felt the slow, patient heartbeat of the mountain. He was teaching her, showing her the world through his senses. It was overwhelming, beautiful, and terrifying. She was a single note being asked to understand a symphony, but she listened. She opened the void within her, the empty space where a Pakbana should have been, and she let his ancient song fill it. Time lost meaning. She sat in the starlit cavern as the light from the fissures moved across the floor. She learned of the secret springs that held healing, of the stones that remembered old battles, of the wind that carried warnings. He showed her the faint, sickly tinge on the edge of his territory, the blight beginning where the dark iron's poison had seeped into the earth, and more. He showed her 4 points, 4 wounds, 4 dark iron anchors forming a cage around his domain, slowly draining him, slowly killing the land. Finally, the flow of images slowed. Alara was exhausted. Her mind stretched in new, incredible ways. But her spirit felt more full than it ever had. Even with the pack bond, she looked at the dark iron shard. Now through Skull's teaching, she could see the poison in it, a writhing, malevolent energy, On impulse, she reached out, not to touch it, but to place her palm above it. She focused on what she had just learned, on the song of the Clean Livingstone. She didn't know what she was doing. She just let the resonance of the mountain filtered through her connection to Skull flow down her arm. A soft silver light flickered around her fingertips. Moonlight, it seemed, though none was here. Where it touched the violet pulse of the dark iron, the sickly light dimmed, recoiled. She couldn't destroy it. It was too strong, too forged in hate. But for a moment she had pushed it back. She had soothed its malevolence. Alara pulled her hand back, stunned. The silver light faded. She looked at Skull. His golden eyes were wide open, watching her with an expression she could only describe as shock. Then that shock melted into something else, something like wonder, and a fierce, proud recognition. He lifted his head and let out a soft woof of air, nudging her knee with his nose, a gentle, deliberate touch. In that moment, the whisper in the void wasn't an echo anymore. It was a duet, a bond forged not by blood or dominance, but by shared understanding, and a promise to protect. Skull rose, paced to the back of the cavern. He nosed at a pile of ordinary-looking stones, pushing one aside to reveal a space beneath. From it, he drew out an object with his teeth, laying it carefully at her feet. It was a torque, a neck ring of ancient design, made of a braid of 3 metals, silver like moonlight, iron the gray of mountain mist, and a third unfamiliar metal that shone with a soft, deep blue gleam. Like a summer night sky, it was simple, powerful, and thrummed with an energy that harmonized perfectly with the song in her soul. For the bridge, the thought floated to her. For the speaker of the old pact. "I'm not an alpha," Alara whispered. "You are the link, the conduit. You speak for the land, and you are of the pack. That is the heart of the pact. Wear it. Let the land's strength flow through you." With trembling hands, she picked up the torque. It was cool but not cold. It felt right. She lifted it and clasped it around her neck. It settled against her collarbones with a comforting weight. The moment it touched her skin, the whisper in her void became a clear, strong chord. The connection was no longer internal. It was manifest, stabilized. She felt grounded, amplified. And then a vision slammed into her. Not from Skull, from something else. She saw a gaunt man standing on a mountaintop of dead bleached stone. His eyes burned with violet fire. His face was lined with ancient grief, and he was looking directly at her. "Soon, little vessel." His voice rasped in her mind like dry leaves. "Soon you'll understand. We are the same, you and I. Hollow, empty, waiting to be filled." Alara gasped, stumbling back. The vision broke. She was on her knees in the starlit cavern, Skull standing over her protectively, a growl rumbling in his chest. "Who was that?" she breathed. "The enemy has a face, and he knows you." Skull's thought was grim. His name is old, his pain older. He is what happens when a speaker loses their guardian and chooses vengeance over grief. Vorian, the name came to her, not from Skull, but from the vision itself, a whisper of identity. "Yes, Vorian, the broken speaker, and he wants you." Alara touched the torque. It was warm now, grounding her. "Then we find him first. We stop whatever he's planning." She stood, her resolve hardening. Skull gave a satisfied rumble. "Go, heal the wounds. I will hold the heart steady, and when the time comes, I will fight." Alara left the cavern different than she'd entered. She was no longer just Hollow, or even Alara the Beast Whisperer. She was the bridge, and the ancient torque around her neck was a testament to a forgotten promise she now had to fulfill. She returned to the pack settlement as dusk painted the sky in shades of blood and gold. The torque gleaming against her simple tunic caused immediate stir. Murmurs rippled through the wolves she passed. "What is that? Where did she get it? It looks ancient, sacred." Alara ignored them, but she didn't go to the lodge, not yet. She needed rest, needed to process what she'd learned. She returned to her cottage, ate a small meal, and fell into an exhausted sleep. In her dreams, the land sang. 3 days passed, 3 days of relative calm. Alara ventured into the forest, learning to feel the land's rhythms through the torque, identifying the edges of the blight. She avoided the main settlement, but news reached her through Liska, who visited daily now. The pack was buzzing about her, about the torque, about Skull. Kalen had recovered physically, but his pride was another matter. Then on the afternoon of the 3rd day, everything changed. A howl split the air, not a call, a cry of alarm, from the direction of the eastern border. Alara's blood turned to ice. She ran. By the time she reached the border patrol point, a crowd had gathered. Warriors, healers, and at the center, Kalen. He was on the ground, supported by two betas. His face was ashen, sweat beading on his brow, and from his chest, spreading like cracks in ice, were black veins. Alara pushed through the crowd. What happened? Ambush, one of the warriors panted. Three of them, hooded. They threw something, dust, gray and foul. It hit the Alpha Air before we could stop them. They fled into shadow before we could give chase. Alara knelt beside her brother, Kalen. His eyes found hers, pain and fear warring in their depths. It burns, like ice and fire at once. Alara, I can't, the pack bond. It's muffled, fading. The black veins were spreading, slowly but inexorably, from the center of his chest outward. This was the same poison, the same malevolence as the dark iron, but delivered differently, internally, targeting not flesh but soul. Get him to the healing halls, now! Arcturus's voice cut through the panic. He'd arrived, Selene at his side, both their faces masks of controlled terror. They carried Kalen swiftly. Alara followed. In the healing hall, Thessa, the head healer, worked with frantic efficiency. She examined the black veins, pressed a cleansed silver dagger to his skin. The metal instantly tarnished, turning dull gray. She paled. This is no natural poison. It's concentrated silent earth corruption. It's attacking his life force, his connection to the pack, to the moon. Can you treat it? Selene's voice trembled. Thessa's face was a mask of professional despair. We can slow it. Poultices of moon-blessed herbs, silver filigree channeling. But to cure it, we would need the source of the blight itself reversed, or a power of pure living earth, strong enough to burn the corruption out. Her eyes flickered to Alara, then away. Our magic is of the pack. This is something else. The implication hung in the air. Pack magic couldn't cure it, but maybe the magic of the mountain could. Arcturus's gaze found Alara, heavy with desperate hope. Alara, your connection to the land, to Skull, can it? Alara looked at Kalen, her proud, strong brother, lying vulnerable, the black veins a grotesque map on his skin. I don't know. I can feel the land's pain. I can push back blight in a small way. But this is inside in him. It's woven into his spirit. You must try, Selene said. And it was not a command from the Luna, but a plea from a mother. Her hand found Alara's, squeezing tightly. Please, please. The weight was crushing. Alara nodded, a jerky, terrified motion. I need to be alone with him. And I need to be near the earth, not here on stone floors, outside, in a place where the land is still clean. They didn't question it. A sheltered grove behind the healing lodge was prepared. A bed of fresh, sweet-smelling peat and moss laid down. Kalen was carried there. The healers withdrew to a respectful distance, though Thessa stayed close, watching with sharp, analytical eyes. Arcturus and Selene stood at the edge of the grove, a united front of silent, terrified support. Alara knelt beside her brother in the soft moss. The sun dappled through the leaves, but it felt distant, cold. She placed her hands on his chest, over the worst of the black veins. His skin was like marble left in a stream. Cold, unnaturally smooth. She closed her eyes, blocked out the sounds, the worried whispers, the weight of expectation. She sank into the void within her. Not empty now, but filled with the complex humming song of Skull in the mountain. She reached for it, not to pull it into her, but to let it flow through her. Help me, she prayed along the bond. Not for the pack, for him. He fights for the land now, too. The response was immediate, but different. Not a surge of power, but a shift in perspective. Skull's consciousness brushed against hers. And suddenly she wasn't just seeing the black veins. She was perceiving the poison. It was a network of hollow, hungry threads, sucking the green-gold light of Kalen's life force, replacing it with silent, static gray. It was a microcosm of the blight in the land, and she saw something else, a tiny, stubborn spark of silver blue light, deep in Kalen's core, his will, his alpha spirit. But also, Alara gasped. There was land magic there, faint, suppressed, but present. Kalen had speaker blood, just as Valdric had said. It was fighting, a desperate losing battle against the corruption. But it was there. Alara had no idea what she was doing. She simply acted on instinct. She imagined her own awareness as those same silver filaments she'd conjured before. Not to push, but to connect, to weave a bridge between that dying spark inside Kalen and the vast roaring furnace of living earth energy that was Skull's domain. It was like trying to thread a needle during an earthquake. The poison was active, defensive. It recoiled from her silver light, lashing out with jolts of nullifying cold that shot pain up her arms. Elara gritted her teeth, a soft whimper escaping her. She felt her own energy draining, being siphoned by the struggle. But she held on. She was a conduit. She let the mountain song flow into her, a river of green and gold and deep resonant brown. She focused it into a single delicate point of light and pushed it toward Kalen's spark. Live, she poured into the connection. Along with the mountain's power, fight. The land needs your strength. The spark flickered, then flared. It wasn't a miraculous healing. The black veins didn't vanish, but their advance halted. The gray static around the spark receded, just a hair. Kalen's breathing, which had been shallow and rapid, deepened. A tinge of color returned to his lips. The effort exhausted her. Elara broke the connection, swaying, her hands falling from his chest. She would have collapsed if Thessa hadn't darted forward to steady her. By the moon, the healer breathed, staring at Kalen's chest. The corruption had stopped spreading. She looked at Elara with something akin to awe. What did you do? Elara panted, sweat cooling on her brow. I connected him to the living land. It's not a cure, it's a lifeline. The poison is still there. It's a stalemate. He has maybe 4 days before it reaches his heart fully. Arcturus approached, his eyes on his son's now peaceful face. Then that is our window. He looked from Kalen to Elara, to the warriors standing grimly by. You have bought us time. Now we must use it. He placed a heavy hand on Elara's shoulder. Rest. Then you will show us where these anchors are, and we will rip this silent earth from our territory. Root and stem. As they moved away, a flurry of purposeful activity, Elara stayed on the moss beside Kalen. Her mother knelt next to her, brushing hair from Elara's forehead. You saved his life. For now, it's not enough. It's the first step, Celine said firmly. Then her voice dropped, for Elara's ears only. This power of yours, it's not of the pack. It's older, wilder. It frightens some of the elders, but it has saved my son. Remember that. No matter what they say, you are my daughter, and you are doing what no one else can. She kissed Elara's forehead and rose to join Arcturus. Leaving Elara with her sleeping brother and the whispering void, the thrum in her mind was steady, approving. She had used their bond not just as a sense, but as a channel. It had worked, but at a cost. The clock was ticking. The mission to Mistwater was decided within the hour. One of the 4 anchors was in Mistwater territory, Alpha Theron's lands to the south. If they could destroy it and warn Theron of the threat, they'd gain an ally and weaken the enemy's network. Arcturus wanted to send a war party, but Elara insisted she go with minimal escort. A war party will be seen as invasion. I need to show them what I showed you. The blight, the anchors, one speaker to another pack. Reluctantly, Arcturus agreed, but he sent Liska with her. You need someone who packs food and doesn't eat moss, Liska had said with a grin when she volunteered. Elara couldn't help but smile. It's bioluminescent moss, very nutritious. You've been in that cave too long. The exchange was light, but Elara was grateful for her friend's presence. They left at first light, traveled light and fast. The torque around Elara's neck was a constant warmth, a connection to Skull even as she moved away from the ridge. The further she got from his immediate presence, the fainter the clear chord in her mind became. But it didn't vanish. It became a compass needle, a constant warm pull toward home, and him. In its place, she began to hear the faint, unique melodies of other places, a chattering brook's exuberance here, a granite outcrop's patient drone there. The land was singing, and she was finally learning to listen. It took a day and a half of urgent travel to reach the borders of Mistwater territory. Their lands were softer than Silver Hollow's deep forests. Rolling hills gave way to wetlands. The air grew thick with the smell of damp earth, blooming water lilies, and ancient peat. The song here was different, a layered liquid melody of frogs, flowing channels, and deep still pools holding secrets. Mistwater sentries found them as they navigated a labyrinth of whispering reeds. 3 figures materialized on hummocks of solid ground around them. They were draped in cloaks of woven river grass, their faces painted with subtle, watery patterns. They seemed less like warriors and more like aspects of the swamp itself. You walk the hidden paths. The central figure, a woman with eyes the color of deep peat, observed. Her voice was a soft burble. You carry the scent of stone and storm, and of sickness. Elara stepped forward, hands open. I am Elara. Land Speaker of the Silver Hollow. This is Liska. We seek Alpha Theron. I bring warning of an enemy that poisons the roots of the world. The woman studied her gaze lingering on the torque. The Silver Hollow Alpha's runner spoke of you, a speaker for the old ones. She gestured. Come, the Alpha waits at the heart pool. They guided Alara and Liska through the wetlands with uncanny grace, their feet finding solid ground where Alara saw only mire. The Mistwater settlement was breathtaking, a village of elegant, stilt-legged lodges built over a vast, calm lake, connected by rope bridges and floating walkways. Mist curled over the water's surface, and the cries of waterfowl echoed. Alpha Theron met them on a wide central platform. He was a lean, serene man, hair the color of driftwood, but his eyes held the sharpness of a heron's gaze. Land Speaker, your warning is dire. Our scouts have reported stillness in the northern fen, a place where the frogs do not sing, and the water refuses to ripple. We thought it an odd drought. It's not a drought, Alara said, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the mist. May I see it? Oh, and then he took her there in a shallow pole-guided boat. The still place was a horror in the vibrant wetland, a patch of water black and viscous like oil, lying perfectly motionless amidst the healthy reeds. No insects skated its surface. No life stirred beneath. It was a hole in the world. Alara's hands trembled as she reached out over the boat's edge. She didn't need to touch it. The void screamed. This was no mere seed. This was a developing anchor, more advanced than the one at Silver Hollow. The water was the conduit here, spreading the blight faster. There is a corruption here, deep in the sediment. It's growing. It will kill this entire channel, then the next, sucking the life from your territory. Theron's serenity finally cracked, a note of dread creeping in. Can you cleanse it? Alara drew a small blue metal dagger from her belt, a gift from Skull, the living stone blade. I must try. She focused, letting the harmonious energy of the blade merge with her own. She didn't dig. She placed the tip of the dagger against the water, directly over where she felt the anchor seed pulsing, and pushed. The blue metal sank into the liquid as if it were nothing. No resistance. There was a faint hiss. Alara pulled the dagger back. Clinging to its tip, drawn out as if by magnetism, was a tiny wicked sliver of dark iron. Its violet light snuffed out as it left the earth. The effect was immediate. The gray in the water seemed to loosen, like a clenched fist relaxing. A faint, fresh smell of wet stone emerged. It wasn't healed, not yet, but the active poison was gone. A collective gasp went through the Mistwater warriors who'd accompanied them. Theron stared at the now dull sliver on her dagger, then at the slowly improving water, then at her. By the stone, this enemy, they are real. They are here. They are. And as if summoned by her words, the air itself changed. A cold prickling at the edge of Alara's awareness. Not from the land, a searching, malevolent consciousness, skimming the psychic landscape like a scavenger bird over a field. It passed over her, hesitated, and locked on. Alara clutched the torque. The road ahead was no longer just about diplomacy. The hunter had found his quarry. They barely made it back to the heart pool. The council was hastily convened. Theron sat at the head of a long table carved from a single piece of driftwood. His advisors flanked him. Alara stood before them, the torque catching the lamplight. Liska at her side. You speak of guardians as if they're more than legend. One of the advisors, a grizzled beta named Corin, said skeptically. Because they are. Alara's voice was steady. Skull isn't a beast. He's the spirit of the Western Ridge. His health is the land's health, and someone is poisoning both. Systematically. She placed the extracted dark iron sliver on the table. 4 anchors, forming a cage, draining guardians. Turning vibrant land into silent earth, dead ground where nothing grows, nothing lives. Theron leaned forward. You believe we have a guardian. Here. I know you do. Every thriving territory does. The old packs spoke of it, spirits of place, protectors tied to the land itself. Alara met his gaze. When I cleansed your water, what happened? A younger wolf, barely more than a pup, spoke up. The lake trembled. Something big moved in the deep. Cascade. Theron breathed the name like a prayer. The water serpent. She hasn't been seen in 50 years. We thought she was sleeping, waiting, until the land was threatened enough to wake her. Before anyone could respond, the door burst open. A sentinel, wild-eyed, gasping, Alpha? The northern platform. There's something's happening. They ran, Alara's heart hammering against her ribs. The cold, searching presence she'd felt earlier was back, and it was here. They emerged onto the platform to chaos. The mist over the lake had thickened, unnatural. It moved against the wind, coiling like a living thing, and in its center, a figure materialized, standing on the water as if it were solid stone, hooded, cloaked in shadow that seemed to drink the light. His face was visible beneath the hood, gaunt, scarred with ritual marks, eyes burning with cold hunger. The little healer. His voice was a rasp, like dry reeds breaking. The luminous thorn in my master's side. You've led me on a merry chase. Alara stood frozen at the platform's edge. This was the hunter, the sorcerer who'd poisoned Kalen, and he'd found her. She drew the blue metal dagger. It blazed with light, pushing back the immediate aura of corruption around him. Your anchors are failing. Your poison is being rooted out. The sorcerer laughed, a sound like wind through a graveyard. These are but scratches. The true convergence is awakening. And you will make a fine offering. A land speaker's essence will nourish the silent heart for a decade. He raised a hand. The black mist around his feet began to churn, forming grasping liquid tendrils that reached for the platform. For her. Warriors! Theron's shout rang out. He shifted mid-command. Where a man stood was now a sleek, otter-like waterwolf. He dove into the lake with a splash. Other Mistwater warriors followed, attacking from beneath the surface, harrying the sorcerer, trying to break his concentration. The sorcerer snarled, swatting at them with blasts of corrosive energy that turned water to steam. But they were agile, using the lake itself as cover. This was Alara's chance, not to fight him, but to wound his purpose here. As he was distracted, she turned her back on the confrontation, focused entirely on the black, still water in the distance. The anchor. She couldn't reach it physically. Too far, and the sorcerer blocked the path. But she had the torque. She had the connection to Skull, and through him to the living earth itself. Alara dropped to her knees at the platform's edge, plunged the blue metal dagger into the lake, and called, not with voice, but with will. She poured everything into the water, every memory of clean streams, of flowing life, of the mountain song. She amplified it with the torque, with the distant roaring strength of Skull, who she felt pounding against the edges of the bond, desperate to aid, but too far to intervene physically. The dagger blazed like a fallen star. The water erupted, not in a geyser of corruption, but in a convulsion of cleansing agony. The dark iron anchor buried deep in the sediment shattered. The viscous water in the distance swirled, cleared, and suddenly flowed, merging with the healthy lake. The blight diluted, broken. The sorcerer screamed, a raw, furious sound. He felt it. The loss of the anchor was a wound to his scheme. You insect, he roared, turning his full attention back to Alara. He blasted the water around the platform, sending it rocking violently. A Mistwater warrior cried out, struck by a bolt of black energy, her body going limp as the corruption drained her. Alara was thrown to her knees, the dagger still clutched in her hand. The sorcerer strode across the water toward her, his hand outstretched, fingers curled like claws, aimed at her heart. Your light goes out now, he hissed. Alara had nowhere to run. She braced, raising the dagger, knowing it wasn't enough. Then the lake beneath the sorcerer exploded, not from magic, but from pure, immense force. A colossal scaled head the size of a wagon erupted from the depths, eyes like ancient jade, gleaming with intelligence and fury. It was a creature of legend, the guardian of the Mistwater, Cascade, the water serpent. She clamped her jaws around the sorcerer's leg. The sorcerer's scream was one of genuine terror and shock. His concentration shattered. The dark mist evaporated. He beat at the serpent's snout with bursts of black energy. They sizzled against her iridescent scales, but did not penetrate. Cascade shook her massive head, and with a final sickening crunch, she dragged him beneath the water. There was a thrash, a gurgle, then silence. The lake settled. Cascade's great jade eye surfaced, turning to Alara. It dipped its head once, an acknowledgement, then slid back into the depths, leaving only ripples. Alara sat on the rocking platform, trembling, the adrenaline crashing. The immediate hunter was gone, but his final words echoed. The true convergence is awakening. Theron back in human form surfaced near the platform. Gasping. The serpent. It hasn't stirred in 50 years. He looked at Alara, awe and gratitude mingling. You woke her. The pact it was remembering. But Alara's relief was short-lived. A sharp psychic pulse shot through the torque. Not from Skull, from home. A message. Desperate. Urgent. Danger. Come, now. They made the return journey at a dead run. Theron insisted on sending 100 warriors. His best. If your enemy is this organized, you'll need numbers. Alara rode on a borrowed horse, pushing it to the edge of endurance. The torque burned against her throat. Skull's distress a constant hammering presence in her mind. By evening of the next day, they saw the smoke. Black columns rising on the horizon. By the time they arrived, they heard the sounds, the clash of steel, the howls of pain. They crested a rise. And Alara's blood turned to ice. Silver Hollow was under siege. A massive army, easily 2,000 strong, surrounded the territory. Cloaked figures in ash-gray leathers, moving with eerie synchronization. And at their center, carried on a palanquin by 4 hulking behemoths clad in dark iron plates, was an obsidian sphere. It pulsed with sickly violet light. Around it walked 3 robed sorcerers, their combined power creating a dome of utter silence that radiated outward, killing plants where it passed. This was the convergence engine, and it was here. Alara's pack, her family, were fighting desperately. She could see Silver Hollow warriors on the walls, holding the line, but they were outnumbered, exhausted. Alara, Theron's voice was grim. We can hit their flank, create an opening. But that sphere, I know, it's the key. She dismounted, her legs shaking. She reached for the bond, for Skull. He was at the ridge, distant. But she felt his immense presence, weakened. The extraction anchors draining him even as he tried to hold the land stable. If he left the ridge apex, the heart would waver, and the land's defenses would crumble. They were trapped in a siege, and the clock was ticking. A runner, one of the Silver Hollow scouts, spotted their approach, raced to them. Land Speaker thanked the moon. The Alpha, he's held them for 2 days. But the air, Alara's heart stopped. Kaelin. What about Kaelin? The scout's face was pale. The poison, it's spreading again. Faster now. The healers say he has hours. She didn't wait for the rest. She ran. The healing hall was a scene of controlled chaos. Wounded warriors filled every bed. Healers moved with grim efficiency. And in the far corner, cordoned off by a screen, lay Kaelin. Alara pushed through. Her brother was unconscious, his skin ashen. The black veins had spread across his entire torso now, creeping up his neck. Toward his jaw, Thessa knelt beside him, her hands glowing with faint green light. But it was clearly a losing battle. Alara, she looked up, relief and despair warring in her eyes. I've been channeling everything I have, but it's not enough. The lifeline you created, it's breaking down. He has maybe 2 hours. Alara dropped to her knees beside him, placed her hands over his heart. The torque flared. She reached for the connection she'd forged before, the lifeline to the land. It was still there, but thinner now, fraying, and the poison had grown stronger, more entrenched. She poured energy into it. The mountain song, everything she had. The black veins stopped creeping, for a moment, then resumed, slower but inexorable. She couldn't hold it. Not like this. Not while the anchors still stood. Not while the source, the convergence, still pulsed outside. Tears stung her eyes. I can't save him. Not without what? Arcturus's voice. He stood in the doorway, armor dented, blood not his own splattered on his chest. Her mother beside him, equally battered. Without destroying the source, the convergence, the sphere. Selene moved to Kaelin's other side, took his cold hand. Then we destroy it. It's protected. 3 sorcerers, behemoths, an army. Then we fight harder. Arcturus's voice was steel, but Alara saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the desperation. They couldn't win this by force. And then a voice. Not aloud, not through the torque. A psychic whisper that bypassed all defenses and spoke directly into her mind. Come to me, little vessel. Vorian, I'll cure your brother. Surrender yourself. Let me use your hollow, and I'll pull the poison from him. I'll save everyone. All you have to do is say yes. Alara gasped. Arcturus caught her arm. What is it? The enemy. He's offering a trade. Me for Kaelin's life. For all of this to end. No, Selene's voice was sharp. You are not a bargaining chip. He's dying, mother. They're all dying. Vorian's voice returned. You have 30 minutes, then I take him anyway, and burn your pack to ash. Come willingly, or lose everything. The connection cut, leaving Alara shaking. She climbed to the ridge, one last time. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. Skull waited at the cavern entrance. He was visibly weaker, his movements slower, the extraction anchors taking their toll. But his golden eyes were as sharp as ever. Alara walked to him, placed her forehead against his muzzle. He's offered a trade. Me for them. A low protective growl rumbled through Skull. I know, it's a trap, but Kaelin, images flooded her mind. Skull's memory of his own bonded speaker. 500 years ago, a woman with kind eyes and iron will. She had sacrificed herself to save the pack from a plague, walked into the heart of the corruption, let it consume her, so that it would die with her instead of spreading. Skull had tried to stop her, but she'd made her choice, and it had broken him for a century. She taught me, Skull's presence murmured in her mind. True strength is choosing who you save, not saving everyone. But what if there's another way? What if another memory, this one from Vorian himself, leaked through their brief connection? She saw a younger Vorian, standing over the body of a magnificent phoenix wolf, Ashenwing, her feathers dulled, her light fading. She'd died in battle, protecting their territory, and Vorian, he hadn't let go. He'd spent 300 years trying to bring her back, twisting the magic, corrupting the land, all in service of resurrection. He doesn't want to kill me, Alara whispered. He wants to use me, to show me what he thinks I want. A bond so strong I'd never be hollow again. But she'd seen something else in that leaked memory, Ashenwing's spirit, trapped, not in peaceful rest, but in the convergence sphere, in agony, 300 years of imprisonment, because Vorian couldn't accept her death. He thinks he's saving her, but he's torturing her. Alara looked up at Skull. What if I don't fight him? What if I show him that resurrection isn't mercy? It's cruelty. Skull's eyes widened. Then a slow rumbling approval vibrated through his chest. You wouldn't face him with anger, but with truth. It's the only weapon I have that he won't expect. Skull lowered his head. Let her climb onto his neck, between his shoulders, for the first time. Alara riding Skull, not in dominance, but in partnership. Then we go together as far as I can take you, and you walk the rest as the bridge. The approach to the convergence was surreal. Skull carried Alara down from the ridge, his massive strides eating the ground. The reaving soldiers saw them coming. A ripple of shock went through their ranks. The giant wolf, the legendary beast, walking calmly, with a rider. They parted, not out of respect, but out of sheer primal fear. Skull stopped at the edge of the Silence Dome. He could go no further without weakening catastrophically. Alara slid from his back, looked up at him one last time. If this goes wrong, it won't. You are the bridge, and bridges connect, they don't break. She squared her shoulders, raised her hands, and walked into the silence. It was like walking underwater, every sound muffled, every breath labored. The three sorcerers watched her approach, curious, wary, but they didn't attack. Their master had given orders. The palanquin lowered, and from behind the pulsing sphere a figure emerged. Vorian, in the flesh. He was ancient, his face lined with centuries of grief. His eyes burned violet, but there was no madness in them, only exhaustion. You came. His voice was almost gentle. I did. I will honor my word. Your brother will be cured, your pack spared. He gestured to the sphere. All you must do is step inside. Let me show you what we can become. Together. Alara walked closer, not with fear, but with something that looked like pity. Show me first. Show me Ashenwing. Vorian's expression flickered. You'll see her. Once we're bonded, once you understand, no, now, let me speak to her. If this is truly for her, let her voice be heard. Vorian hesitated. Then with a wave of his hand, the sphere's surface became translucent. Inside, a shape, ethereal, flickering. A phoenix wolf, magnificent even in spirit form. Feathers of fire and gold, eyes that had once held warmth, now held only pain. Ashenwing was curled in on herself, shaking, a soundless keening emanating from her. Alara's heart shattered. Vorian, look at her. Truly look. I am looking. She's waiting. For the resurrection. For freedom. She's not waiting. She's suffering. Alara placed her hand on the sphere. The torque flared, and the connection Alara's gift, her curse, her bridge extended. Not to Vorian, to Ashenwing. The spirit's consciousness brushed hers, and the plea that poured through was a tidal wave. Let me go. Ashenwing's voice. Broken, ancient, desperate. Please, this isn't life. This is a cage, I'm not waiting for rebirth. I'm begging for death, for rest, for peace. Let me go. Ilara gasped, tears streaming down her face. She turned to Vorian. She's begging you to release her. Lies. Vorian's voice shook. You're manipulating. I'm not. Touch the sphere. Listen. Really listen. Vorian's hand trembled as he placed it on the obsidian surface. Ilara channeled everything. Every ounce of the bond, of the Torque's power, of the mountain's truth. She forced the connection open. Made Vorian hear what he'd been deaf to for 3 centuries. Ashenwing's plea poured into him. Unfiltered. Raw. Devastating. My love, you've become what you hated. You've imprisoned me. Please, I loved you. I died to protect our home. Don't dishonor that. Don't keep me here. Let me go. Vorian's face crumpled. His hand slipped from the sphere. He staggered back. No, I was saving you. You were grieving, and grief twisted into obsession. Ilara's voice was gentle. But it's not too late. You can still honor her. You can still let her rest. I can't lose her again. You already lost her 300 years ago. What you're holding isn't her. It's her pain, her prison. A sound behind them from the silver hollow lines, a figure stumbling forward. Kalen. He should have been unconscious, dying, but he was on his feet, barely, supported by 2 warriors. His face was a mask of pain, but his eyes were clear. The black veins glowed silver. Ilara, he gasped, the poison, it's connected to the sphere. I can feel it. He raised a shaking hand, and the silver scar power, that hybrid magic born of land, speaker blood, and silent earth corruption, flared. He didn't attack the sphere. He reversed the flow, pulled the poison from himself, through the connection, and sent it back into the convergence. The sphere cracked, a hairline fracture, but visible. Vorian screamed. The psychic feedback was agony. One of the sorcerers turned, pointed a skeletal finger at Kalen. A bolt of condensed corruption shot forth. Kalen, Ilara's shout. He couldn't move. Too weak. The bolt struck him in the chest, right over the black veins. He collapsed. The world seemed to slow. Ilara's scream was primal. She didn't think. She opened the void, completely. She became a conduit, not for an attack, but for a plea. She channeled Ashenwing's desperation, her pain, her love for Vorian, and she blasted it into Vorian's mind, made him see. Every moment of Ashenwing's 300-year imprisonment, every plea ignored, every day of torture. Not because he was evil, but because he loved too much and couldn't let go. Vorian fell to his knees. I see. Oh gods, I see. He looked at the sphere, at Ashenwing's flickering form. What have I done? He raised his hands, not to attack, but to release. He poured his own power, every ounce, into the sphere, not to strengthen it, but to shatter it. The obsidian exploded, not outward, but inward, a silent implosion of released energy. Ashenwing's spirit was freed. She formed briefly, fully, a phoenix wolf of breathtaking beauty. She looked at Vorian, and there was no anger in her eyes, only love and relief. Thank you. Finally, rest now, my heart. Grieve properly, and live. She touched his face with her muzzle, then dissipated into particles of golden light, ascending, free. Vorian collapsed. The sphere was gone, and with it his power. The 3 sorcerers fell, their connections severed. The behemoths animated by the sphere's magic crumbled to rust. The reaving army without their engine, without their leader, broke. Panic spread through their ranks. They fled. The allied packs, Silver Hollow Mistwater, and Howling Crag warriors who'd arrived during the siege charged, routed them completely. The battle was over. Ilara ran to Kalen. He was on the ground, the black veins receding rapidly. The poison sent back to the sphere had been destroyed with it. He was pale, weak, but breathing. His eyes found hers. Did we win? Ilara laughed, a sound halfway between joy and sob. You idiot. You almost died. Had to. You're the speaker. I'm just... My brother, you're my brother. She pulled him into a fierce hug. Liska appeared, holding a water skin and a blanket. Did someone say idiot? I have soup. In sarcasm, medicinal amounts of both. Kalen managed a weak smile. 3 days later, Vorian was brought before the council. He was a shell, powerless, hollow, just as Ilara had been. He stood in the great hall, not in chains, but guarded. Arcturus sat in judgment. You attacked our lands, poisoned our air, killed our warriors. Vorian looked up. His eyes were clear now, no violet fire, just human sorrow. I have no defense. I was lost. In grief for 3 centuries, and I hurt so many. His voice broke. I tortured the one I loved most, thinking I was saving her. Alara stepped forward. I asked for mercy, exile. Let him live, but far from here. Let him learn what I learned. That emptiness isn't a curse, it's a space, to be filled with new purpose. Celine looked at her daughter, then at Vorian. Exile, but if you return, if you threaten any pack, any land again, there will be no mercy. I won't, I swear. On Ashen Wing's memory, I'll spend whatever years I have left trying to heal what I broke. He looked at Alara. Thank you for showing me, for freeing her and me. He was led away to a life of wandering, of penance, but life nonetheless. The Pact of Renewed Stone was formalized a week later under the full moon, on the platform before Skull's Cavern. 3 alphas, Arcturus, Theron, and Riven of Howling Crag gathered. Alara stood with them, and Skull emerged, restored now. The anchors destroyed, the land healing. They each placed a hand on a large river stone. Alara placed hers atop theirs, and Skull lowered his muzzle, touching his nose to the top of the pile. A warmth flowed. The braided metals of the torque shimmered. The stone didn't glow, but everyone present felt the oath settle into the land itself, a binding promise of mutual protection and respect. No more trials of dominance, Arcturus spoke. We offer partnership, guardians and packs, equals. Skull's rumble was approval. The ceremony complete. 6 months later, summer had fully returned to the western ridge. Wildflowers bloomed in places that had been gray and dead. The blight was gone, replaced by riotous life. The school of land speakers met in a sunny clearing. Alara teaching, Liska and 3 young pups all showing sensitivity to the land's song sitting on the grass. Learning to listen, to feel, to connect. Close your eyes. What do you hear? One pup, a girl named Marin, tilted her head. The trees, they're laughing. Good, they're sharing nutrients through their roots. It sounds like joy. Kalen approached, walking with easy confidence now. The silver scars on his chest were permanent, beautiful intricate patterns. He'd embraced his new role, training other hybrid guardians, wolves who could sense and fight corruption. Land speaker? Ready? Alara smiled at her students. Practice, I'll be back. They walked to the family lodge. That evening, the family gathered. Arcturus, Celine, Kalen, Alara, Liska, around a table in the family quarters. Not the formal hall, just them, laughing, sharing a meal. Celine looked at her children. Remember when we thought Hollow was a curse? Best gift I ever received, Alara said. Kalen threw a piece of bread at her. Still can't believe a moss-eater rides the legendary wolf. Alara caught it, threw it back. They dissolved into laughter. Arcturus watched his family, his pack, whole again, in a new way, a better way. To the bridge, he raised his cup. To the speaker. They all drank, and as the sun set beyond the windows painting the world in shades of gold, Alara felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. She felt home, not in a place, but in the hearts of the people around her. The hollow had been filled, not with what she'd lost, but with what she'd found.